question, and it is, if you were to author a book, who would you dedicate it to?
So for me, I think this is a little bit of a surprising question or like answer for me. Like, not that it's like I would dedicate to my parents, but like I've been thinking like in the last couple weeks about like how I don't necessarily contact my parents as much as maybe I would want to, or anything like that. So I think like dedicating the book to them or something, or like saying thanks in that sort of sense for like what they've done for me in terms of like growing up and all that kind of stuff. I think it's sometimes something I forget to say or forget to do. So I think it was surprising for me to think about that when I like thought about like who I would dedicate a book to, but it's definitely my parents. So.
Cool. And just for reference, I think every single time I hang out with Olaf, he does end up getting a call from his parents. So I definitely think you talk to your parents a lot.
Well, I don't know if I answer it every time.
Fair.
You want me to go?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the first one that I had for Nick was like, who is your idol?
That's a tough one. The one that comes to mind immediately is this one author that I really, really look up to. His name's Adam Grant. He just had a book come out called Hidden Potential. I think I recommended it to. Did I recommend it to you, Arthur? Okay, I recommended it to someone else. It was Rocco. I promise, it was someone in the SGA. But yeah, and I actually got the opportunity to see him speak. He's on the faculty at University of Pennsylvania, and he's my idol for like a couple different reasons. I really think I appreciate his approach to life. It's very optimistic. It's also very kind of like grounded, because I feel like optimism sometimes gets a little like lofty and lost in the stars, but his is like very research-based, very grounded, and yeah, I really like him. I also just really like the way the topics that he's chosen to write about. They've all kind of spoken to me in a different way. His first book was called Give and Take, and it was all about how the people that like make efforts to give back and take care of the people around them make more of an impact than those that try to kind of not selfishly, but selfishly climb to the top, not really with much regard to the people that they work with. So I really liked that. His other work was one was called Originals, and it was a great book about like the power of creative thinking and new ideas, and all of his work just really has spoken to me in a very unique way, so I really look up to him. All right, take me through a day in the life of Olaf.
So I would say that like my week is very different depending on the day. I get made fun of a lot because I only have class on 2 days a week this semester. So people think that I don't go to school. So some of those days that I don't have class, I either have, I'm a TA for a class, so I have office hours where I'll be doing that kind of stuff. I'm also a tour guide on campus, so sometimes like this morning, I had a tour this morning, so I'm waking up generally about the same time anyways, because I have class at 9:30 on Tuesday, Thursday, and on Monday and Wednesday I have things starting about 9 or 10. I have lately also been going to yoga in the morning, which very much makes the day feel good. Sometimes I feel like I lose sleep over it, but after the yoga, at least during that specific day, you feel refreshed and that kind of stuff. I definitely have been spending a lot more time in the other free time that I have after those things I mentioned in the SGA office. I made a joke today about possibly getting a bed for the SGA office so I could sleep in there, because it is kind of my home away from home when I'm not in my apartment, which I'm actually rarely in. But yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know, please go to Asana. It's the yoga studio in Hoboken. It's amazing if you like yoga. It's free for student students. I know Sarah, Ava, Ola, I go. Does anyone else like go or like know about it? Yeah, Becca? Yeah. Yeah, it's so good. 6 a.m. class on Thursdays is where it's at, people. Definitely go to the 6 a.m. class.
All right, so I had assumed that your answer to the second question was going going to be different than your answer to the first question, but it might be the same one because I knew you'd use Adam Grant for one of them. But who is the most influential person in shaping how you read?
Oh, definitely my mom, actually. Totally different answer. Yeah. My mom is definitely someone I look up to. Obviously, she's my mother. I love her a lot. But I think to that point, she's in a leadership role herself where she works. And I think she's taught me a lot about what it means to kind of be a leader. And I think something specifically that I took from my mom was, I feel like she draws a ton on her personal experiences and just like how she parents, and she kind of translates that into the way that she works and the ways that she leads. Because I think for a lot of us, especially in America, because work tends to be like everybody's thing, but it's really not her thing. It's like, I'm very lucky because she supports like me and my sister. We're like her main priorities, and all the ways that she supports us, it kind of like influences her work and not vice versa. So I would say my mom is definitely the most influential person. Some of the like big things I've learned from her are really just like, it's funny because I just asked all of like the day in the life, but truly like how she kind of just like lives. She wakes up early, she reads or does yoga or works out, and then she'll spend time with like me and my sister when I was like at home in high school, and then after that go to work and come home, spend time with us, or do her own thing. I think like one thing that I really look up to about her, she has like so many different hobbies. She loves to cook, she loves to read, other things that I also like to do, so I guess she definitely influenced me that way. But yeah. Okay, what are you most grateful for in your life, or what's your proudest achievement?
So I will definitely answer the first one because I don't like the second question. I don't like when you have to talk about like the achievements, stuff like that. I don't like talking about that kind of stuff. But the grateful one was hard for me to like pinpoint one thing. The first thing was like very personal to me about like what I feel about like in terms of my personal growth and like feeling a lot more comfortable in myself, but I thought that was kind of a weird thing to be grateful for in some sense, just because it's all about me and about how I feel I've grown. But I think the other thing is like just being grateful for like everyone that I've met at school at Stevens, because I've become a lot closer with those people, and part of the reason I have grown the way that I have is because of those people that I have met and hung out with at Stevens. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is like just being grateful for those people that I'm around on a daily basis and want to hang out with on a daily basis. So, what is something you have wanted to do but haven't been able to do yet, and then why have you not been able to do that?
Okay, this might be like a crazy one, but I know this might resonate with the three of you especially, but I've always wanted to write a book. I love to read, I really like to write. I hope someday I get to write a book. I hope I have something to write about too. It's like really long to write a book, so I hope I have enough to fill up the pages with. But yeah, that's something I've always wanted to do. Whether it be like something about my personal experiences, even if it's just something that I keep and no one else kind of gets to see, it's totally something I'd like to do someday. As to why I haven't done it yet, I actually made a plan at the beginning of this summer to dedicate a lot of time to trying to like have a writing project or something. Yeah, I don't think I sat down to write for more than like 15 minutes, but we're working on it. Maybe someday, maybe after like this next year or something like that. But yeah, I think it would definitely be very special to me if I were able to write a book someday. All right. Yeah. What would I write about? Okay. Probably some sort of like narrative of something actually no, I totally know what I write about. Yeah. So a while back, I really wanted to write about this idea of like potential and like how do you leverage it. And then Adam Grant actually did it, which sucked. I mean, I only had the topic. He actually like wrote it in like 300 pages, which is super cool. But I think now I would write about something in the lines of kind of like group polarization, actually. And I know that sounds like a big, like broad, scary topic, but I think one of the reasons that like I was so passionate about Kindness Week, and I know Polina also too, but I feel like we are in a very like tense and increasingly polarized world. And I think having some sort of attempt or strategies or better understanding the resources, or like the research around polarization and how we can kind of connect people better would be like a touching and relevant story to tell. So I'd probably write about that. Yeah.
That sounds more of what you would
Yeah.
A narrative doesn't sound like the right thing.
But, all right. I'll ask you, yeah, who is the most influential person in your life most recently?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, I mean, I would venture to say you, Nick. Because, like, and not because, like, you've been necessarily, like, present the entire time, but because you haven't always been present, it's made me think about, like, stuff and how I, like, perceive things and how I need to, like, how I understand life and how, that kind of stuff, because I think, like, seeing when you weren't available or not available when I was available was something that, like, I had to deal with on my own personal, like, side, and on, like, knowing that that I had to figure out to do something on my own when I didn't really want to do something on my own. So I think that's it's you, but in the way that you might not have expected.
Thank you. I'm glad. And by like not available, I mean like I didn't like go to a foreign country for like 6 weeks. Like just like sometimes things get busy. But yeah. I guess now we can talk about some more SGA related things. You have one more for me?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
What's your dream job?
My dream job. Oof, this is tough. I think, okay, ideally, I would run some sort of company, I think, with some sort of very big, like, impact-driven purpose. I think it would be something, like, very dynamic, whether it's helping, like, groups of people solve, like, a problem. I don't want to say, like a consultancy, but almost to that point. If I could help other groups of people, like, solve some problem they're having in a very, like, creative, abstract way, I think I would really enjoy that. I like reading about a lot of these things. I like, you know, reading a lot of the research. I love to learn, so anything that allows me to do that and where I get to kind of, like, help people do what they want to do. Yeah. But, yeah, okay. SGA stuff now? Okay. Yeah. So I guess we'll kick it off with like a tough one, and I will open it up to like the people in the room too after Olaf answers. But what do you think the biggest problem the Stephen student experience has at the moment, and how should we go about fixing it?
So I think, at least what I feel like, is that a lot of students don't understand where to go when they have issues with something. If that's the Student Government Association, if that's a specific office, if that's something like that, and they don't necessarily always know who they can talk to, who can tell them where to go either. If it's like an intermediary, or they just don't exactly actually try to look for them, and even if they do try to look for them, might struggle to find that specific spot. And so I think that's something that in the Student Government Association we want to try to do, and try to find different ways to make us more available to students who aren't going to just always be on campus, or those that are just kind of passing by, and try to find places and spots maybe that we can talk to those students as well.
Does anybody else have any ideas off of that? A problem that the student experience currently has? You can think about it too. Yeah, Helena.
I was going to echo what Olaf said. Like, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, because today I was just sitting up at one of the CCB offices, and a first-year CS major came in and was like freaking out because one of the classes that he needed to get into was like a bio lab, had too many research seats, and he couldn't get in. And I was like, oh, we were actually talking about this in SGA last night. Like, I'll bring this to my BPA and they can figure it out. But like a lot of students just like don't realize like what we can do for them, and I think also just like a lot of students don't like utilize like all the resources we have at CCB.
think that's a tough one to think about too sometimes, because in the SGA we have access to so much information, and it's hard to like comprehend sometimes that other people don't know how to find any of this, you know, because we're talking about it all the time. Yeah, Arminder.
Kind of bouncing off both those points, I think the other big thing is not just like not so much like the accessibility of it, although that's definitely a problem as Olaf mentioned and also Andrew, but it's also like, you know, kind of consolidating it into an accessible resource for the whole student body. That's kind of like another big thing I think that should be pretty important on the SGA priority list.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Well, this one is a little bit cliche, but I think it's a very important one. So, what was the biggest reason for you wanting to become president?
Okay, I'll preface this with a little bit of petty, actually. So in high school, I ran for student government president. I lost by 1 vote. So I think I've always been interested. Stop laughing. I'm kidding. But I like knew for like a while that I wanted to be involved in student government. I didn't really, after I lost in high school, I wasn't the most involved in the student government there, but I knew it was something I really wanted to do here at Stevens. And so I'll say there's just kind of, it's been like almost a long time in the running kind of thing. I thought about this for like a long time. And then I'll also say there's been, I think, really connecting with the people that have come before, like whether it be in this role or others like Polina and Alex or Gavin Polina last year, and even like before that. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of meeting Adrian. He's like a dinosaur here now. I hope you don't see him here because he needs to get the heck out of here. But like he did like a ton for this campus as well, and I think so part of it almost feels like finishing the work that has yet to be, that other people started as well. So, because I know like even though a year is a really long time, it's not a long, like it's not that long at the same time, you know, for some really big picture things. So I would also add to finish the work that my predecessors started. But all right, tell us the first thing you're going to do as VPO.
So the first thing, or I guess like I don't have a specific thing, but the first thing that I want to try to do with different ideas, we were actually talking about them afterward in Senate yesterday, like different things when it comes to engaging our senators and anyone, obviously the public, we want public to come, public forum that we have as well to talk about stuff, but just trying to engage more senators that don't necessarily always speak their mind, because especially as the Vice President of Operations, one of the main jobs of that role is to be the liaison between Cabinet and Senate and kind of oversee the Senate. So I want to have an environment that like more students feel comfortable talking about, and so like something that we came up with, I think Paulina or AB came up with it yesterday, which is a really great idea, was like having like time where like we're trying to not call on people we normally call on. We're not going to say we're not going to call them at all, but just try to ask people who don't normally speak to say, hey, like you start the conversation, like because oftentimes people that always talk are always the ones that start the narrative and that kind of stuff. That includes me. I always try to say my opinion in the discussion, but trying to hold back a little bit from my perspective, but also those that speak a lot, just to do that, and also encouraging people to speak up as well. Like I know we had a vote yesterday and stuff like that where not everyone voted the same way, and I want to encourage those people that even though they might not agree with the rest of Senate or most of Senate, to keep speaking their mind, because I want them to feel comfortable that their opinion matters. And if that's not what the Senate votes on, that's a totally different story, but it is valid to understand where they're coming from and what they want to say.
Yeah, I think Olaf and I have both spent a lot of time talking about like, and I'm sure Alex and Polina, I know that they did as well, just like how to get more voices engaged in discussion in SGA. It's something we're constantly thinking about. Yeah.
What's your plan to deal with like actual intra-committee engagement within the committees? Because sometimes it can be difficult to tell from the external student body perspective if committees are, doing their jobs.
So that definitely starts with the committee chair and talking to the committee chair, because they're the ones that are in the committees and doing the day-to-day activities with the students, and then like talking to them about like maybe who's participating, maybe who isn't, and maybe having a conversation with those that aren't participating, and not saying that you have to participate more, or like but just understanding why are you not showing up, or why are you maybe not participating in conversation. And it's not like it's a bad thing. You don't always have to be the one participating in any specific conversation. And sometimes that can also be like maybe feeling stuck in a specific committee. Maybe you don't want to actually be a part of that committee anymore. And that's something that understanding just that personal part of it, understanding that person's specific situation is very important. And I think like talking to the committee chair to try to maybe have them do some different things, maybe try to get the different people involved, but also on like on me to talk to that person or those people specifically, maybe just to see what the situation is, because you don't always have to be the one that's like leading the conversation.
I'll also add, I think the role of a committee chair needs maybe a little bit of attention too, because it almost, I think there's not a lack of, I don't want to say like lack of support, but I think it is a little bit of like a random walk kind of. There's not exactly, depending on your committee, there's not exactly like a point person in administration to go to. There's not necessarily a point person in the SGA. I mean, obviously the VPO, but it's sometimes a little difficult to navigate who you're supposed to work with. And I think you often spend so much time just figuring out who you're supposed to work with. It's difficult to then have tasks to delegate to people or decide what the members of your committee are supposed to do. So I think easing that load off of people, making it very transparent, very easy to have a support person for the committee chairs might also help give them more time to do the things like engage with their committee members and have meetings where people are invited in to engage, or whether that's senators on committees or just general student engagement. So yeah, more to, yeah, Shane.
Building up the topic of general student engagement, how do you feel general student engagement has been on campus, and do you have any plans on changing the current state?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think student engagement has totally come a very long way since we first got here. And part of that, I think, is just because, I mean, the world shut down. I hate to talk about COVID, but seriously, like when I first came in as a first year, like it was the first in-person class since COVID. And after running orientation this year and like the peer leader program, I totally saw a complete difference of your classes, like orientation. There were so many more people engaged, so many more people at events, and that was great to see. So I think there's definitely kind of like this upward trend, but to that point, there's always work to be done. I think student engagement is always a topic that's like very difficult to talk about because there's so much always going on, but very difficult to promote and get people to go to. And it's like, how do you live in like this paradox, where you have so many people that are actively doing things, but no one that's showing up to stuff. And I think some of that is the same reason that like Stevens as like an organization struggles a little bit, because things are kind of siloed. I think a lot of our clubs have very similar events. Like, please raise your hand if you have seen more than one organization offer a resume workshop. Yes, everybody offers it, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because like a finance club like FIBA, probably finance resumes look very different than like a computer science resume for like a tech job. So, but I do think that there is some overlap there in what we're doing. And I think that like when you're fighting for attention, like we all are, it's even more pressing to have like collaborators and to organize events with other boards so that you can get more people to come out and spread the word even more. So student engagement definitely needs to be worked on. However, we've come a long way, I think. Yeah.
On the topic of student engagement, I know that you brought up originally that the Senate is not like a peer representation of the student body because it has to multi-art person. So do you have plans to expand or not fix, but like work on getting more engagement in SGA?
Totally. I think one of the things that Olaf and I had talked about earlier was actually about kind of how we're going to really push to have a full Senate by the end of our term. And one of those things is kind of like slowly recruiting people to become a senator, just in different like parts of the campus experience. I know one of the things that I found really interesting was at another school, I forget which one it was, but someone was telling me about their SGA at their school. And believe it or not, the role of a senator in the SGA there is typically someone that was already a leader in a club, and then they move on to the SGA to be kind of like to form like clubs policies and the overall like student experience, right? Because you've already had that experience. Here it seems a little bit like different. While we have like relatively like much stronger retention for like the older classes than we used to, there's still like a flood of like first year senators, and then slowly people trickle out, right? So I think trying to find people that were already involved in something, that were heavily involved or were already a campus leader, getting them involved in SJ is a great place to start, because they've already demonstrated that they want to be involved, they can be involved, they are a leader, and they have really unique experiences to bring to the table. So hopefully that's one thing that we can kind of start with, but it's definitely a goal that we have to address.
Yeah, and I want to add something that when we had our student government conference that we hosted yesterday, one of the schools that came was TCNJ, the College of New Jersey, and one of the things that I think was really cool with their SGA was they do something where the title was called like the Delegate Core Cohort, and I thought it was really cool because it was something where it was students that aren't senators can still get a title in the Student Government Association. It still gives them that aspect of feeling a part of the SGA, because I think sometimes it's a little bit hard when we have only senators and you're either that or you're not a non-senator, and not every person wants to be a senator. Maybe not everyone has the time to be a full senator and do all the requirements associated with that, but giving students the opportunity to be a part of the SGA in a more informal sense, and still come to meetings and still and understand what's going on campus, but have a little bit less responsibility, maybe work on just one committee that they're interested in or something. I thought that was something that was really cool that they worked on, and something that I think we can definitely talk about implementing at our SGA as well for kind of retaining more people, because if you do start in the delegate cohort, or whatever you want to call it, you might become more interested in student government, and then you might actually run for Senate. But having that so that there's like a middle ground to allow students to maybe explore it without having to completely join in first.
And this is also something, we talked about this a little bit, but you said this is something other orgs do too. Like I think in the Stud, if you write a certain amount of articles, you get a title, right, Eva? Or,
yeah, it's kind of like encouraging. You can say you contributed, but you're not fully in the student. So you've like written 5 articles and then you're a staff writer. So having a title like or award, you can say if you want to put on your resume, but encouraging to climb a little bit higher if you like what you're doing.
Yeah. So this is it. Yeah.
Do we not have that now with like non-senators can join committees? I know we talked about this at the Senate actually literally this week. So non-senators can join committees. I know it's in the budget committee you can. So would that be the idea that they would be a budget committee member or a campus wellness committee member? Is it like that sort of thing that PCJ was talking about?
So I think for them it was just someone who basically like showed up to a certain number of SGA meetings, Senate meetings, and then they got the title. And like something that I think we could expand for us maybe is trying to encourage them to join like one committee. Like if they just want to show up to Senate meetings, that would be great as well, because we want more people at our Senate meetings and knowing what we do too. But having more people in committees, even if they just join one committee, because that's one more person in every one of our committees, and we always love to have people helping out in our committees. So that would be something I think, because then you don't have all the other responsibilities that you need to go to, but you can still show up and help out whenever that committee might need help or anything like that.
I think a lot of it is like the recognition factor, like just like kind of like almost thanking them too for like being a part of it, not just calling them like non-senators. Like having a bit of a nicer name for it.
All right. I will echo the same question that you had for me. What is the first thing that you will do as president?
I'm gonna give you the first couple things, because there are a lot. But I think I hate to talk about structure, because I feel like everybody comes in wanting to change like the structure, and it's the thing that nobody ever sees. But I do think there are some little tweaks that I'd like to make kind of immediately, just to internal. And it's good that everyone here is in the in the SGA, because you can kind of hear what to expect a little bit. But the first thing is just advising. I know that's kind of like a contentious topic, or formerly was, but we would like to kind of like narrow down who our advisors are going to be, pick kind of like a long-term solution to who the SGA advisor will be. And then also on top of that topic, having point people for our cabinet members, direct point people, which is already kind of there, but I believe that having kind of like a point person, whether the title be an advisor for each role, to have someone to go to directly in administration for not only kind of just like the role, but also just like advice, mentorship. I think that that could be super beneficial. And depending on that, how that goes, it's very possible that we kind of expand that to the committee chair role too, because I think that that's a role that could also really benefit from having a direct person in administration and getting that element of kind of mentorship. I'll also say meeting structure. I think that would be the second thing. Definitely going to look at meeting structure and see what ways we can better engage everybody. Like I know one piece of feedback that I got from someone that works in student life was that a lot of the SGA meetings are updates. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the things that we're doing, and while that's great, a lot of times they don't apply to everybody. And so does it really make that much sense to talk about updates for so long, right? So that's definitely something we're going to explore. Are there alternatives to how the meetings are being run that we can implement? And then I think the third and the last thing I'll talk about here is just our general like visibility on campus. I know one thing I would like to do is either weekly or bi-weekly having some sort of tabling for the SGA, maybe in lieu of the office hours, because I know some people don't get a ton of takers for the office hours. So moving that to kind of like a tabling, moving around to different parts of campus, and having some or all of the cabinet members for a period of time sit there. And any senators or committee chairs that also want to attend would of course be very encouraged to attend. I know that pre-COVID, this is something that happened. It was called like the Ask Me Anything booths, and hopefully we can kind of resurrect that in a different way. Yeah. All right, I'll ask you one more SGA question. By the end of next semester, what do you want to have accomplished in your role?
So like speaking of the thing that I wanted to do first, definitely that. Like I want to just in some sense know the opinions of more of the senators just because they have contributed a lot more. But also for me, like knowing more of the senators and like people in our SGA, like on more than just a like work level and understanding more of them as a person, because I think that's very important when you are working with people to understand like them as a person, because they're going to have their opinions and they're going to have like whatever they're doing and that kind of stuff. I think it's important to know them more holistically, because I know a lot of people, I mean, I know basically everyone in Senate, but that doesn't mean that I know them more than just their name and that they're in the Senate and that kind of stuff. And I think that's something that we can improve upon, like for me personally, but also try to work on like making, like having some more informal events. Like we don't have to schedule like a full event or something like that, but like having people stay after Senate, we just talk and chat about what you're doing next, what you're doing the next day on that Monday or that week, or chat about SGA stuff if you'd like as well, because I think that's also a really fun and formal time, like right after Senate, because I know a lot of people leave right after Senate or right before, because I think it's that's sometimes some of the best conversations I've had in SGA about SGA, but also just about everything else, because I think sometimes stuff that you talk about in the meeting just comes up and you start like brainstorming right after the meeting, and sometimes that leads to something really, really productive as well. So just increasing like maybe informal conversations and informal times where students and senators are talking and getting to know each other.
I agree. I think like just going off of that, I had the pleasure of kind of like coordinating the peer leader program over the summer. And that was like super fun. And something I love about peer leader and like orientation is that like everybody's friends. You know, for like 2 weeks, everybody's friends. Like it doesn't matter who you are. And while I know that like this semester is like intense and everyone has a lot of commitments, I would definitely like to bring that kind of like warmth that Olaf was talking about to the SGA and see, you know, what we can do to kind of foster that sense of community. Because I mean, to a certain point, it does feel like everyone comes, does their stuff, and gets out of there. We're very transactional, very businessy, you know? And I think we would really benefit from having like a stronger community in the SGA. So it's definitely something we'd like to work on.
doing something similar of a preschool program during the summer, where like SGA senators show up a week early and just do community bonding, or something more during the year?
You know, it's actually something that Danielle in Student Life, she's our associate director of Student Life, had talked about, how that the SGA like now doesn't really play much of a role in orientation, and they definitely should and could. And so I think that's definitely something that we'll kind of like look into to see what ways SGA can kind of play into orientation and those sorts of things. But outside of that, ideally, we definitely have some additional bonding events throughout the semester. I know it's something that like Alex and Polina have been very good about like trying to do, but of course it's hard. You know, like it's hard to get people. We're talking about student engagement, literally. Like it's hard to get people to show up to things. All right, let's see. Yeah, so we have about like 15 minutes left. So I'd love to hear from the audience if anybody has any additional questions. There's Sarah's been like itching to ask a question.
So, you guys have worked together for a while and have friends all over the class. What is something that you've learned from each other?
Do you want to go first? No. Okay. I can go first. I'll say two things. One is I am like very scatterbrained. Like I like get excited about a lot of things like very quickly. And so I'll just like start talking about one thing and then completely jump to the other thing and then back to that thing. Like, and it happens all the time. And Olaf is like, "What are you talking about? Like you're literally speaking a foreign language." And it's true sometimes. So it's definitely, I've definitely learned to like kind of like contain my thoughts a little bit more when I'm talking to Olaf. And yeah, so I'll say that one. Yeah, definitely like being a better communicator, more like focused and direct in that sense.
I think for me, like some of that, like Nick is a very ambitious person. Sometimes it takes me to ground him a little bit to understand that he can't accomplish everything that he wants to accomplish, just because it takes a lot more than just saying it out loud and hoping that it happens. But I think that has rubbed off on me too, to becoming a little bit more ambitious, because I don't think that for myself I ever really like wish too much for myself, or sometimes even if I have something that I wanted, I don't exactly acknowledge that I wanted it or really went out to get it. So I think like that ambition that he has definitely rubbed off on me to have some more ambition and respecting some of the work that I've done to get to where I am as well. So.
Thank you for your question, Sarah. Well, it's kind of sad. Any other questions? Yeah. Julia, yeah.
Jared asked me to ask a question.
Julie, I'm here now.
My bad. He could ask himself.
Which one?
What?
Did you not ask anything?
No, I didn't. We didn't get here yet.
Very cool. Okay, well, Stevens has grown like significantly in the past like 5 to 10 years. How do you plan to amplify student voices when there's so many new and different perspectives and more perspectives on campus now?
I think, sorry, I'm like, my knot in my shoe is like driving me insane. But anyway, I think one of the first pieces of this is I truly believe, and so I'll preface this with a little bit of a story. I was like added to I'm like the undergraduate representative for the school business selection committee for the new dean. The dean's retiring, no bad blood, he's just awesome and like wants to retire. So it's super cool, yeah. But I'm on the selection committee, and within the first meeting, I very quickly realized how little of a say, or how little like students actually matter in these decisions. And I don't mean that to sound super like pessimistic, but like when the provost had charged the committee to find the new dean, he gave a list of, I think it was like 7 factors. You know, it was like, improve this area, and this area, and this area, and everything had some sort of actionable, like measurable point to it. Whether it was like increase enrollment by this number of, or increase donations by this amount of money. You know, and one bullet, literally right? And we have such a little say in what actually happens here. It sometimes feels like, you know, in retrospect, I actually think we have a really big say, but like, but that's just one little element. And I think going off of that, I think getting students as close to the top as possible for where these decisions are being made is very important, because I think we do an amazing job of having good relationships within like student affairs and some of the departments, whether they be academic or on like the student life side of things. But I think there is definitely a disconnect at the highest level. And I don't think that the student voice is heard there. I don't think it's seen there, and I think it absolutely needs to be. Anything to add? Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is a little bit more laid back. You asked me this question at our town hall last year, actually, so I'm going to turn it around. If you were part of a salad, what parts of the salad would you eat?
You want to go first?
Both of you, please.
You can go first again.
Okay. Okay. I guess
Answer carefully.
I'll try. I'll try my best. I think for this goal specifically, I would actually say the bowl. And I'll say the bowl because I think, like, it's like being in this job, and I also think like just the things that I've liked to do before, the way that I live. I think I try to kind of like build something, but not have too much of a role on like what happens inside. Because I think like if you step too far into like if I were to like put the dressing on the salad, then it touches every single piece of the salad, you know, and I don't want to do that. So despite the fact that the bowl kind of like gives the salad like a place to live, I would say that's where I would like to be. That's what part I'll say I'll be with the salad.
All right, I was not expecting to answer outside of the salad, but I think I would probably be some sort of fruit in a salad. I think, first of all, because I really like fruit, but also because I think that oftentimes gives a little bit more like a sweeter side to the salad, and I think I want like SGA to be a little bit more like happy and stuff like that. And I think that's something that a fruit would definitely be. Fruits make me happy, so.
Good answers. I like this. Okay, and then so for part two, maybe not as laid back. So you both have done great things in SGA thus far over the last few years. Can you name a time, it doesn't have to be an SGA, that maybe you failed at something or something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, and how you bounced back or how you dealt with it to move forward from that problem?
I'm very bad at answering.
Okay. Yeah, let me think about this one. I have a couple of ideas, just trying to think about which one's the best. Actually, you know which one is like, I'll share this one, because I actually talked about this in the interview. So I don't know if all of you filled out your mid-semester course evaluations, but that was something that I worked on as like a committee chair and really pushing for, and that was kind of like the first thing I did, I guess you could say. And I'm actually really, really proud of that one. But it was a bit of a fight, because when I first kind of pitched the idea to David Zeng, who's our vice provost, he absolutely loved it. David likes any idea, really. He like loves everything. But whether or not it actually happens is a completely different story. And so then it was, you know, I met with him about it, he loved it, met with the Faculty Senate. The Faculty Senate hated it. They thought it was like a terrible idea. They didn't kind of like, they just didn't want to do it, they didn't want to deal with it, they didn't see the benefit. And I think I realized the way I framed it made them hate it too, because I mean, we often think about our course evaluations. For the first years, you haven't filled like semester one out yet, but usually you fill a survey out for something you feel really strongly about, typically negative. So overwhelmingly, course surveys are very negative towards professors, very constructive onto what they can do differently. So adding in, when I had come to them to tell them, we're going to have a second one in the middle of the semester, where it's basically going to be you get railed in advance of your end of semester course survey. Because the way that I framed it was like students have this feedback, it's not being listened to, it's only happening at the end of the semester, and then none of these changes get implemented, so why can't we have it earlier? Like it did have this negative framing to it, you know. But then I kind of like took a step back. I tried to change the approach, and one thing that I said that I guess worked because it happened was I said, you know, since faculty are like basically compensated in part or rewarded on how they perform in their evaluations, we kind of like I tried to shift the narrative to let's give you this feedback now so that in hopes you can change things. You know, the course can get better, and then your end of semester course evaluations are going to be much better. You know, so then you have opportunities for, you know, the rewards, because for those of you that are not aware, or for some of like our first years that might not know, professors do get like financial compensation, and it is like a determinant of their tenure as to how they perform on their end of semester evaluations for a course. So it is looked at and important. So yeah, I would say that was one place that I definitely, there was immediate failure, and then I was able to course correct.
For me, I think it might actually be when I wasn't chosen to be on your cabinet, because the way that I reacted to it was definitely not the best way to react to it. I'm not going to get into any specifics about that, but I definitely could have reacted in a more just better way for me, but also for you two, but it was something that like I had to think about a lot afterward, and think about like why this, why that, and like personally like understand it for myself, but also just so I could understand it to how to move forward, and so like understanding like what feelings I had based on my assumptions or based on whatever, like that was very important for me to move forward. And it also was something that I think definitely motivated me to be more involved in SGA and try to do more in SGA and stuff like that. And so it's definitely something I think that was something I wasn't expecting, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you don't always know what life is going to throw at you. But it was definitely something that helped me learn what I needed to do better, or what I needed to change for, say, the role that I'm going to be starting next semester as well. So.
I've obviously gotten to work with you guys a lot in the past 2 years, and I think you guys have been great leaders, right? And hopefully, fingers crossed, you get the votes you need, right? You will. But I think one of the big things about being a leader that I personally really look up to people who do it is being good mentors. So I'd love to hear about experiences you guys have had where you guys have been mentors to someone and helped them achieve success as well.
Okay. And well, does anyone else have any questions? I just want to make sure we're safe with everybody's. Okay. Okay, we'll take Jared's and then we'll kind of wrap up. But yeah, so fencing, I would say, has given me the opportunity. I think, like in a lot of sports, me and Kalina have talked about this, but there's so much opportunity for mentorship. And I think fencing is really the place in my life where I've gotten to mentor a lot of people, because at my home club, it's very generational. You know, there's like younger generations that are always working up, and then, you know, you go to college, and sometimes the college kids come back and help you. But, you know, it is like, what the heck is fencing? How do you even get started? Who like cares about this thing? It's so like, you know, it's so like kind of mystified as a sport, right? And so I think someone really took me under their arms. Her name was Sophia, and she really, really mentored me when I started fencing in about like 7th or 8th grade. Because like I literally had seen it on TV and gotten lucky. There was like a place near my house that, like a club near my house that did it. And so immediately after like I kind of stuck with it for a little while, she started to mentor me, and that was beyond beneficial. Because like in any sport, you win and you lose. The wins are great, but you do a lot more losing at first than winning. So you need someone to kind of help you, you know, stay with it and keep going. And she definitely was that person for me. And I like to think that I was able to do that to a lot of the younger like fencers at my club now. because I mean I can talk about Ola as my like very best friend in the whole wide world. Her name is Alexa. She's like a fencer from home. She's like a female version of me, honestly. If you ever meet her, please run. But no, but and I really do think I was able to like mentor her successfully to like where she is today. She's like 2 years younger than me. So I like to think that was like very formative, and it gave me the opportunity to be mentored and also give back to other people as well.
And for me, not to use the sport example as well, but I definitely think like for me in high school, like in my first 2 or 3 years of high school, I didn't like my coach for tennis at all. I just thought various different reasons. I just didn't like him. And it took to my senior year to understand that like all those things were not as important. And the one thing that really mattered was that you could always tell and you always knew that he cared. He was always there. He spent all the time in the world, because he used to be a D1 tennis coach, and now he was coaching high school kids. Right? Like he was not there because he was getting a large paycheck. He was always wanted to go out and hit. He always wanted to be out there, and he would spend as much energy as he possibly could on you to get better or anything like that. And there's a lot of students, so you can't always be very like focused. But it took me a long time to understand and like see that. And so like for me, like I'm kind of fortunate enough on the tennis team that we can have player coaches. So we have 2 rounds of tennis. The first one is doubles and singles, and I generally only play doubles because I'm not on the singles lineup because I'm not usually good enough for it. But I will go on the sidelines of each court, and I try to be a coach for the specific player in their specific matches. And I think no matter what different things I say or do or anything like that, during a match I try to give advice or change their tactics. The most important thing that I've noticed is when you actually like show up and show that you're actually caring for them and show that you want to be there to help them out, even when they're struggling, maybe they're playing the worst tennis of their life. If you're standing there next to them, trying to calm them down, be helpful to them, like showing that you care and that you want to be there, and that no matter what they're going through, obviously it's specifically tennis, but like there is a lot of mental stuff that goes into tennis as a solo sport. I think it's the most important thing that I've noticed in terms of like mentoring or trying to like push people forward and stuff like that. So.
I know Jared's back there with a good question.
Yeah. So kind of circling back to when you said like you're on the interview committee for the dean, and they just kind of listed student experience as a subject, not even measurable. It's really hard to measure anything with what we do here in the student government. How are you going to measure your success as like a cabinet?
I think there are some ways it is measurable though. I think like I know we had the first like student satisfaction survey where you kind of it's very like just survey where you rate your experience on like a scale of 1 to 5. But you know that's one way, just like student satisfaction overall. But I think it really like the SGA does so much. It's so difficult to kind of like hone in on one component of it. I think like quantitative like methods are always a way that we can do. Like we had talked about engagement. Like the first conversation that we had, it was about how many people are in the SGA, right? You know, that's a very quantifiable thing. We can see whether the SGA, you know, has tons of open seats or no open seats. I do think that's a decent way to measure success. But in that realm, you know, I can't say it speaks for the whole student experience, but it does speak for interest in our organization. So on that front, I think there's certain quantifiable ways to do so, and then I think there's also just ways that are a little bit more like theoretical and conceptual. Like when I go to one of Sarah's events, our lovely festivities director, and it's super full and everybody's having a great time, well, that might not be the best metric to evaluate how something's doing, and I'm sure there are plenty of better ways that we can learn, but I do think that that's a strong indication of like success. Like I shared about the first year of orientation this year, Like your orientation was by far more engaged than last year, your class. By far more so than our class as well, being right after COVID. Whether that just be heads, like number of people at the events, or just in general interest in organizations and how many people were coming around campus. I think that, like, while I don't have any quantifiable data for you, I think that that's a strong indication that your class is very involved or wants to be involved, right? And I do think that that's a successful way that indicates or at least kind of shows like a strong trajectory of the students so that we're headed in the right direction. Yeah.
So obviously coming into a new term year, you know, like new cabinet, there's gonna have to be new committee chairs because you're both gonna leave committee chair positions, and that's like a lot of moving parts. So like, how do you suppose that you're gonna be able to manage and oversee that every person who moves into a different position, if they don't have experience in the past, or even if they do have experience, how are you gonna make sure and oversee that everyone is first off, like comfortable in the position that they're in, but also on the trajectory to do a good job?
I think that goes a little bit on like when I was talking about like earlier, like, and a little bit about maybe what Nick was talking about with like point people, figuring out like for specific roles, like who is the best person to talk to, because if the person has a specific administrative question, like we're not always going to be able to best people, and even us who've worked in those positions don't always know like, the best answer, like the exact answer to that question. Like trying to help them understand like who are the best people they could talk to in administration, but also like finding people that have done that role before, and if there's no one that's done that role before, like trying to just answer as many questions as they have, but also try to help them out. For me, especially as the like vice president of operations, to speak to them, like especially those new roles. Like I definitely want to have a little bit of one-on-one chat with them. Maybe it's 5 minutes just to see what they understand the role to be and what they understand that they're going to be doing and what we hope they'll be doing as well. And just understand, make sure that we're all on the same page, and then trying to make sure that they know that I'm a resource, or that another person who's done this role before or done something close to that is also a resource to talk to anyone else in the Senate, because that's another thing that like that goes back to like knowing people and knowing when they need help or who they need help with, or understanding just like having those more conversations with other people as well. So.
I would echo exactly what he said. I think kind of like having point people for each of like our, whether it be our committee chairs or our cabinet members coming in would be critical, because I also think that takes the burden off of like us as students to not have to like onboard someone, because there's often people that know better. And then also just creating connections with each other. I think as simple as that is, I think it's so important, just so we can all be like comfortable with each other, bonding rather quickly. I think that that's going to be really important. Showing up for each other. That would be really, yeah. Well, I'll ask for like final questions. Cool. Well, I thank you all for such an amazing kind of like conversation. The only last thing I wanted to bring up is, well, of course, have you both kind of say again, but our cabinet positions. So one thing, so we're going to, essentially the timeline, so the timeline, we're going to keep the interest form open until, this says the 24th, but we decided to extend it a little bit longer so that people have the opportunity to fill it out over the weekend of Thanksgiving as well. So it's going to be closing that Sunday before we come back to campus. And then following that, following week from the 27th to the 1st will be interviews for cabinet, and then the selection announcement will be on the 3rd or the 1st. So essentially, just like a little bit of an overview, we encourage truly anybody that is interested to apply. We're going to try to send this out to as many different channels on campus as possible, because one thing we've talked a little bit about is that we would really like more voices on cabinet from different facets of campus and just different experiences overall. So one thing we're kind of changing this year a little bit is that former SGA experience is not necessarily going to be considered in the evaluation of someone that wants to be on cabinet. So we're more just looking for a general experience you have on campus or from high school, or any just real experiences that you've had and interest in the role that you have. So essentially, how to work, fill out our interest form. The QR code is here. I encourage truly anybody interested to apply. And following that, you're going to hear from me or Olaf, and essentially following that, we'll schedule an interview. If you do fill this out, you're going to get extensive information on how the interviews are going to be run. It's incredibly transparent. All of the questions that may be asked are going to be given to you. The format will be given to you. We want you, like, there's no barriers here. It really will just be coming prepared with whatever the interview contains, and then following that, you'll hear from us about whether or not we'd like to have you on our cabinet, and if we elect to go with someone else, we will absolutely suggest another role in the SGA where you can best fit. So just because you won't make it on the cabinet absolutely does not mean there's another leadership opportunity or a role in the SGA for you. So yeah, I thank you all for coming. I know we went a little over on time, so thank you all for staying and hanging in with us. But yeah, thanks for coming to the town hall.